guys, what's going on? So today I got an update on the 1995 Buick Regal. Just wanted to make a little scene there for you guys to see that it's driving under its own power and everything. This thing is ready for round 2. That's right, it looks like crap, but it's still gonna get it, guys. We've done some stuff to this car that I'll basically go over in this video, and there's not much more I want to do to this thing because there ain't much left of this thing, to be quite honest. So I'm just gonna go once around here. Back end's pretty used up, still looks like it has a lot of life in it, but I'll show you why I think I'm gonna go drive forwards the entire time and the next derby this thing is in. Alright, so I think I'm gonna go ahead and start the back of the car and then work my way up to the front end. So the back end of this car is pretty well used up. This is the problem child corner here. It's pretty messed up here, guys. I didn't realize quite how bad it was until, you know, after the derby, a few days after the derby. I've been noticing just how bad it is, how badly kinked the back end of this car is. But I mean, regardless, obviously I'm going to run it again. I don't really care because I plan to use the front of this car, honestly. So this is only here just to bend in a little bit more. Hopefully I don't get too many hard shots to the back end. But something I'm noticing about this back end, it's starting to kink right up at the B-pillar, which I did not see until today, literally today. And this is a month, basically a month after the derby. I just noticed that it was bending up at the B-pillar here pretty bad too. This is a pretty bad kink here. I mean, all this metal was flat, and this was obviously just a straight piece of metal, but not anymore, guys. And that was probably worse before we pulled this all out. I mean, we've pulled it out a few inches for sure, probably a half a foot. That gap is no longer like 5 inches, it's more like 8 to maybe 8 inches. And this gap is about a 3-finger gap, give or take about 2.5 inches. But guys, when I actually discovered is that this trailing arm, don't know if you guys can see it moving there, but it's broke. This lower trailing arm is broke, and there's a good reason for that, because the entire back end is so bent. The mounting bracket is actually bent sideways, so there's no way I'd be able to get another one on. And honestly, guys, I think I'm just gonna roll with it. I'm not that worried about it. But there's a reason why I didn't pull this out further. A reason for that, there's 2 reasons. One, if you pull this out any further, those seals are already weak. If you try to pull this back out, you're basically, after bending in and bending out, it's going to fatigue those seals, and it's going to end up ripping apart them seams, and you don't want to do that. I mean, it's already split apart up here. You don't want to make that worse, because only thing you can do is end up creating a very bad weak spot through here. And I've seen it happen on these GMs, where if you get hit in the wheel here, if it's solid enough to this rear axle, it'll rip the whole thing right out, the floor and everything. This car isn't, I don't know if this car's rusty enough to do that, but it's quite rusty, so it might try. And I would really prefer that not to happen. So, and on top of that, if I pull this out anymore, this tire is going to start to be more and more exposed. And the last thing I want a guy doing is coming up behind in front of this tire and ripping it off, because it's already got no trailing arm holding it on. So yeah, this thing would probably just rip right out of this sucker. So just don't want that kind of bad stuff to happen. Not that I really care, because I'm just going to kind of send this car anyway, but just to prevent it, just be able to get as much traction as I possibly can for as long as possible. You guys can see that frame rail, we did get it to be pretty nice here, but unfortunately there's not much left of this frame rail, and I thought there was I really thought there was more, but you guys can see there, if I shake that around, this entire thing is moving, so not much left to it. And I think even if it gets hit, even with how weak this is, it's still already really badly kinked right there. I think it's just gonna fold right back in where it was. So, and I 9-wired this back up so it doesn't tear off, or if it does tear off, it's gonna try to stay onto the car. This side still has a decent amount of life left in it. Kind of been a little funky. I'm not super happy with how this car bent in the back. I mean, it's not bad, but it's just not great, because you guys can see it all kind of went down and in. Would really prefer just to go straight in, but this car sat so high in the back, I'm generally surprised it didn't do worse. So, but I did not realize, once again until today, that this side was actually splitting too. So there's not much left going on in the back of this car. Not much life. You guys can see that's all split there along the B-pillar as well. Up there, ends about right there. So yeah, it's there's another split. So it's starting to go on this side as well. I think there's actually, I'm not sure if that's a kink or not, but I wouldn't be surprised if it is. This passenger door, pulled it back out, just used some 1/2-inch bolts with washers, hooked the chain up to it with the truck, pulled it out, did the same thing in the front there. You guys can see it's come out enough to be above the door sill thing here. I might have to try to pull this out of there. I don't know if I even can. Might be so jammed underneath this door, I don't know if I'm going to be able to. So I might just have to leave that there. But it's giving me pretty much plenty of room between the battery box and the door, at least. There's not much I can do about this firewall A-pillar. I'm on meat right here. I can't really do much about that because that's really solid metal. And on top of that, you'd have to hit this a lot more times in order to make all this. I mean, this entire A-pillar would have to bend over a little bit. The firewall would have to kink really, really hard. You'd have to do a lot of hits and a lot of hard hits, but you're just not going to really see, I don't think, that much in a bone stock demolition derby. So the only way this could hit my battery is if the door actually went the seal on the bottom and was able to go that far in, but I really doubt that's going to happen, just because of the way this door is designed. But this is also another problem that we had on Sunday morning, actually. I noticed the strut on this side of the car on Saturday night was actually kicked back on top and on the bottom here. So you had a kind of this going on. And honestly, guys, it just looked like if it got hit once, I didn't know if it was broken, because I didn't remember it being like that. I thought it was only bent inwards, but now I thought, well, it was leaning back, so I didn't know whether it was actually completely broke. And I didn't want to take that risk. Even if it wasn't broke, I don't want to go out there and get it hit once and then have it break, because it already was at its max. I think it was already at its max pressure, and that strut being so rusty, I just didn't want to take the chance, especially when I knew I had a nice clean strut sitting inside the tent here. Unfortunately, so I have to wipe my nose here because I'm having some bad allergies, but I had to actually deal with the inner tie rod and the outer tie rod on this car. Unfortunately, it just ended up turning into a nightmare. So now this car has a brand new tie rod and outer tie rod. I already had them sitting around for these Luminas, because I actually used that inner tie rod and the outer tie rod on the Buick Century. I ran now, what is that, 4 to 5 years ago. That's the tie rod I used on that car. They fit Lumina struts because I put a Lumina suspension in that car. So fortunately, I had that sitting around. So this car was ready to run on Sunday, in case you guys didn't already know that. Gonna go ahead and open the hood here. Basically talk about the front end of this car a little bit. This car is actually very straight in the back, or in the front end, as you guys can see. Just going based off the front end, it's a little bit more in on that side, but that's only because the crush box is in. There's no kinks or anything in the frame except right up front where it's starting to just bend a little bit. You guys can see it's starting to pinch the whole frame rail actually together, and it looks like this is starting to bend here. So it's starting to go right up front, which is where you want it to happen. You don't want anything moving in back yet. But honestly, guys, something I've noticed about these W bodies, now I've ran them enough, you want to use, in how many I've watched on YouTube, I should say as well, you definitely want to use this side of the car more than this side. If you're going to favor one side of the front end, favor that side of these W bodies. And there's a few reasons why I say that. And some may disagree with me. And the reason why they may disagree with me is because of that radiator hose right there, and the radiator being so close to the AC compressor, and that the pulleys are on this side of the car. But here's the thing. Number one, this frame rail is a pretty straight shot, guys. There's no bends, no ups or downs in this frame rail. It's just a straight beam going from the front to the firewall. This frame rail, however, is not that way. And I'll show you guys if I can get a good shot of it. Here you guys have it. You guys can see there that there's actually an upward mountain there for this frame rail. These frame rails actually are not the same. I think on this frame rail, just going based off looking at how they're designed, this frame rail looks actually weaker on the driver's side, which is surprising because back in the 90s, this is about the era when they were trying to do these side impact, or the offset impacts in their crash tests that they had to pass. These cars did very well in those, but I'm surprised that this frame rail looks actually weaker on this side than it does on the passenger side, because sometimes you'd notice, and I know this is way off topic, but cars were actually weaker on the passenger side because they were they were putting more strength on the driver's side, because that crash test only was done on the driver's side. But this car, I think these cars are actually tougher on the passenger side. And on top of that, there's another reason why you don't want to use this side as much, is because the rack and pinion and the column connect on this side of the car, obviously. And when you use this side of the car, the subframe drops in the back, you're going to end up losing your steering. And if you do it on that side, it's going to drop the subframe, but it's going to take a lot longer to actually lose your steering if you kink that side of the car. Now, best case scenario for these cars to bend is if you were able to get this frame, or the subframe horn here, to actually bend up, just go straight up, instead of kicking the whole bottom of the subframe down. I'm sorry guys, I can't see because of the sun, but if this goes down in the right here, as this portion of the subframe goes up, you're gonna have a problem with the back end of the subframe dropping down too much. Ideally, this frame rail is going to go straight up about right here. It's just going to go straight up in the air. So that's kind of my 2 cents on these front ends of these W bodies. I know that's kind of unrelated to this particular car at the moment, but we'll see how it holds up after I try to use the front end as much as possible. I'm going to try to run this car pretty hard, guys. I'm not going to try to place, even be that competitive. I think I'm just going to try to send this car as much as I can. I never know how I will feel at the day of the Derby, but honestly, guys, I just want to have fun. But I do want to cover what was going on with this car. Why was it having issues? The answer is that bad boy right there. The mass airflow sensor was all gunked up and stuff like that. Had oil, metal shavings, no dirt though. Had no dirt, did not suck up any dirt or clay. And sure enough, I just cleaned that up, and it runs great now. Actually, it runs better than I've ever had it running. Throttle position has no problem, looks perfect. I knew it was one of those two more than likely that was causing me the issue, but ended up being the mass airflow sensor. So other than that, or I guess that's about it. Other than being very muddy, she's ready to go. I wouldn't even be hesitant to put down the hood right now, chain it up, and get in and send her as it is. Honestly, fill up the radiator a little bit more, because every time it runs it just gets a little bit more out of the radiator. But I top off the radiator and just send the way it is, because it's pretty much ready, guys. So alrighty, well, stay tuned for more updates. I might be heading to the Fonda Fair. I'm not 100% sure on that yet. I know I have not been there in a few years now, but we'll see. I'm going to just have to determine whether I have the time, because I have a lot of stuff going on in the background that you guys don't even know about. Just a crazy amount of stuff going on. Unfortunately, it's not too related to Demolition Derby, but hopefully sometime in the future it will be. So, alrighty. So, like, comment, subscribe, and I'll see you guys in the next video. Bye-bye, everybody.